Welcome to my presentation. I chose the topic of food clubs and pubs as I find the everyday life of the population of a country to be telling of their culture. England is a large country with a variety of people, regions, and cultures. A country may have its distinguishing features by which everyone can easily identify it, but it is only by taking a closer look that the small details of a country emerge. When it comes to the evolution of British eating habits over time, a lot has changed in the past 30 years. Britons bought less tea, white bread, and less red meat in 2018 than they did in 1992. However, while the nation has become healthier in some aspects by reducing red meat consumption and eating more plant-based foods, they have also started to buy more unhealthy foods such as sweets. A big influence on the nation's eating habits has been the technological advances, which have led to freezers and microwaves to become commonplace in the British kitchens, as they have all around the world. Even though the consumption of meat as a whole has declined over the years, Londoners buy significantly more meat than average, especially lamb, pork, and poultry, and also more fresh green vegetables and fruit. The Scots, however, reverse this pattern and are more reliant on beef and meat products and also starchy foods, while a persistent feature of the Welsh is a marked preference for salty butter over margarine, for example. Yet, regional differences in dietary nutritional value are very small. This shift in food and eating consciousness may have been a result of how British society's eating practices and preferences were shifting with other social alterations. Social interactions impose cultural norms for food preferences, while social and economic influences foster dietary reform. Now, dietary transition is a global phenomenon that occurs at various rates in different parts of the world. Because of the complex nature of diet and its close interaction with demographic, economic, social, and health influences, we need to consider changing context in order to understand dietary change. Now, food patterns in the United Kingdom have shown both consistency and change through the last century. The main course or proper dinner has remained recognizable and fundamental to British food culture, even as the ingredients and methods of preparation have evolved. Increased eating away from home, increased food availability, and snacking have been confirmed to have major effects on eating habits over the last 20 years. Eating is one of the most basic and yet most complex human behavior. For example, little is known about the diversity of factors that influence food choices at various stages of life. The social context is in which dietary changes are made, as well as the system of ideas in which they are made, cannot be overlooked by the theme of public health nutrition. Nowadays, the dishes vary in the different regions of Great Britain. In the cooler north of Britain, there are preferences for filling foods. In Scotland, for example, main meals often begin with thick soups and potato dishes. They are popular, as are minced beef dishes. Baked goods and heavy desserts, such as steamed and baked puddings, with generous portions of custard, are also popular in the north of England. Crisps are popular everywhere, but fried fish is particularly popular in Yorkshire. There are also distinct regional differences in the type of fish eaten. Dishes that are most popular in the southeast of England include salads and lighter desserts. No account of British eating habits should omit the contribution of immigrants to their diet. Although foreign travel has broadened the tastes, the significant number of immigrants the UK has welcomed over the two decades has done far more. Some of these people settled in communities of their own, and local shops soon adapted to the new demands, bringing West Indian food to Brixton, Indian to Southall in the Midlands, and Greek to Camden. But some cultures have had a far greater impact on the diet of the nation as a whole. Chinese food was almost unknown in Britain until the 1950s, but today almost every community has its Chinese takeaway to rival the fish and chip shop, and almost everyone has had curry, hamburger, and fried chicken. Finally, it should be remembered that food preferences have evolved over centuries. Originally, they were imposed by climatic and financial constraints, but even after this declined, there were and still are strong regional preferences that are passed from parents to children. When it comes to clubbing, there is a thriving late-night economy in city centers, spawning new buildings and new jobs. Nightclub operators have become very involved in such developments. There are 1,750 nightclubs in the UK. However, in addition to traditional pubs, several other types of pubs and bars have developed in cities during the 90s in response to youth-dominated pubs in city centers' demand. Club culture has truly become a global cultural phenomenon. Global multimedia companies and the internet connect club scenes all around the world. Although dance and club cultures around the world share some components, night clubbing has not evolved into a globally homogeneous community. Despite the fact that club cultures are influenced by local backgrounds, customs, and economic circumstances, there are common views, lifestyles, and fashions across national borders. Clubbing has become one of the most common forms of experimental consumption among young people in the United Kingdom, especially in cities and towns. The nightclub industry is worth an estimated $2 billion a year, with over a million young and many not so young people spending an average of £35 a week to participate in its activities. However, in this part of my presentation, I will not go into the economic implications of clubbing. I want to focus instead on what the experience of clubbing entails and the spaces it provides for clubbers to get a sense of belonging in order to strengthen their group identity. Like culture industries, club cultures are involved in the production of social meaning. Although they do not share all the characteristics of culture industries, they face similar problems and employ similar strategies to overcome them. These include the unpredictable, unstable, and fashionable demand for the goods on offer. Clubbing and nightlife entertainment provide experimental, time and space-related goods with short lifespans. Nightclub businesses use several strategies to deal with the product and audience volatility. One is to diversify risk by building a portfolio of goods where hits offset misses. For example, a portfolio of different nightclub venues, different events, DJs, different brands and concepts tailored to specific consumer groups. Another approach is to diversify services, offer a variety of entertainment activities in one location. The UK nighttime economy experienced a massive boom, particularly in the late 80s and the 90s. However, despite the significant and visible rise in nightclub in many cities, going out to pubs, bars and clubs remains a rather marginal leisure activity in terms of consumer spending on leisure and recreation in general. Even in the UK, which has one of the most thriving nightclub scenes, eating and drinking out, home cinema and gambling take by far the largest share of consumer spending on leisure and recreation. On an estimated 11% or 84 billion of all consumer spending in 2004. The past year since COVID hit the world, it has presented unprecedented challenges to the nightlife industry. And if changes are not made soon to support this industry, the consequences could be devastating. On the website Nighttime Industries Association, we learn about the initiative called Save Nightlife, a movement that highlights the social and cultural importance of nightlife. In a written appeal to the government, this association has called for a solution to the rent crisis faced by nightclub operators as a result of the COVID-19 crisis. Commercial tenants who are unable to pay rent due to the coronavirus pandemic are currently protected from eviction by a moratorium on lease relinquishments. The moratorium is now scheduled to end on June 30, and it is hoped that all operating restrictions imposed on the hospitality industry will have been lifted by then. In its letter to the government, this association expressed frustration that postponing the problem in short-term stay on evictions have been short-sighted and superficial with no real understanding of the intergenerational legacy of deaths caused by COVID-19. Large parts of nightlife have been closed since March 2020, with no meaningful way to open and trade. As a result, the shops have been unable to pay rent through no fault of their own and have accumulated significant debts. The prospect of being able to repay this debt is out of reach for most in this sector. As the government prepares to lift this moratorium, commercial landlords will once again be allowed to evict operators in this sector, and this will cost jobs and livelihoods, hamper the wider economy, and waste public money previously spent on supporting these venues. Pubs play an important role in history, economy, and society of the United Kingdom. A large number of studies have looked at their social and economic importance. Despite this, the number of pubs in the United Kingdom has steadily declined since the 1980s. According to the British Beer and Pubs Association, the total number of pubs fell from around 67,000 to less than 51,200 in the period of 1982 to 2014. The decline of British pubs can be explained by a number of factors that have affected and continue to affect the industry. One of the reasons is a change in the industry after the 1960s, when pubs were separated from breweries that had previously controlled them. In the 1980s, brewers owned 80% of pubs in the UK. After a series of conglomerate mergers that threatened to turn the industry into a monopoly, Parliament passed the Beer Order, which required the big brewers to sell pubs and stop brewing. As a result, brewers were forced to sell their pubs at very low prices, leading to the growth of company-owned pub chains dedicated to retailing. These firms have dominated the industry since the early 1990s. The number of tenants has skyrocketed, leaving the vast majority of pubs in the hands of large national brewers and multinational pub chains. Pubs forced to source their drinks from single supplier quickly grew to dominate the industry, accounting for around 55% of all pubs in 2011. Changes in ownership of pubs have led to changes in marketing tactics used by establishment to attract customers. Many pubs abandoned their traditional role of serving beer and evolved into other forms of operation, such as European-style cafes. Customers' choice and attractiveness of pub nights were also influenced by the fact that the cost of beer in supermarkets fell significantly. In parallel, the emergence of at-home entertainment led to the decline of the popularity of pub nights. As a result, the total number of pub nights per household has steadily declined, with most taking place at weekends. Offering food is becoming increasingly more important in attracting more customers. Pubs have also started to invest in high-quality coffee to appeal to new demographics. In recent years, craft beers have become a major part of the pub sector. Customers increasingly drawn to local, natural, and unusual beers and looking for beers of different origins, styles, and flavors have continued to drive craft beer sales, while the number of breweries catering to this craft beer trend has grown significantly. Alongside, established breweries have also begun to adapt. This shift in consumer habits and interests in craft beer has also led to many pubs taking this opportunity to offer food and beer in combination. As food has become an important part of the modern pub experience, many pubs have begun to recognize the opportunity to offer food alongside beer. Hence, the move to more food-focused establishments and the growing trend to create a space that is not just for drinking alcohol, but a variety of occasions and a variety of customers. Following this closer examination of pubs and their development over time, in this part of my presentation I will explore the role that pubs played in rural England as facilitators and promoters of group cohesion and social interaction. The factors leading to the decline of pubs are particularly dramatic for establishments in remote areas, commonly referred as village or country pubs, which have suffered greatly in the last decade. In terms of the type of customers these establishments depend upon, rural pubs differ significantly from those in urban areas. Pubs are an integral part of the so-called nighttime economy in towns and cities, which consists of clubs that attract both residents and visitors and have a major impact on the local economy in terms of job and revenue. Each village pub has its own cultural terrain, with the term terrain referring to a web of relationships that encompasses the entire network linking villagers and costumes. For villagers, the pub can be the center of their life, social life, especially when there are no alternative social amenities. For these reasons, village and country pubs are seen by residents as important networking places, particularly in communities with limited access to rail and road links. Given these factors, places such as village shops, local libraries, and pubs become important hubs for social interaction and connection in rural areas, which are typically characterized by spatial isolation and lack of services and facilities. Apart from providing opportunities for new ventures, the economic growth pubs appear to be an ideal forum for the development of social and human relationships and for community events and initiatives. In addition, pubs are places where individuals or groups of people can start projects that benefit community as a whole. Besides this, while pubs are often associated with problems such as binge drinking and alcohol poisoning, these problems seem to occur mostly, almost exclusively, in urban areas and rarely in rural areas. In conclusion, food, pubs, and clubs are the key components that make up everyday life of the average British person. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy my presentation.